OBS is a software that I love to use. It's free, available on Windows, Linux and Mac. And I use it to prepare my tutorials. I use it to do my lives, that they are on YouTube, that they are on Facebook. And I also use it when I have virtual conferences with remote teams to do, or when I'm giving tutorials directly to students, or when I'm doing coaching to some people I'm counseling about project management. I'm Christian from Vision 6D, and I'm going to share with you some of the knowledges I use with OBS. Like that, you might get some tricks if you already know OBS, or if it's new for you, you will learn how to use OBS. Once you installed OBS, you might find an environment which is similar to the one that is behind me. If now you are wondering how I'm recording this tutorial, I launched a second instance of OBS and I'm recording with OBS itself. It means that you can have multiple instances of OBS. One of the easy way to start with OBS is to go into Tools here and to select the Auto Configuration Wizard. We have a window that opens and we see that we have three choices. The first one is optimized for streaming. This could be to be used when you want to do streaming to Twitch, to YouTube, like me when I do my lives, or on Facebook. Then, if you are doing like I'm doing now, recording directly into the PC, I use optimized just for recording. And the third possibility is when you want to use OBS as a virtual camera, which means that the flow of information you're seeing, if you want, is directed to another software. Those other software can be remote conferences softwares like Meet from Google, like Zoom, and like Team from Microsoft. For the moment, I'm going to select the one where I optimize just for recording. The first setting that I see is the size of the canvas. The canvas is the black board that we see here, on which we will define what we provide as video inputs. So I will leave it as such, but you can see that you can have different sizes and you can also stream or record different screens that you would have. So I leave it as it is defined, and then we have the definition of the frame per second. Once again, you see that we either can choose 30 or 60. With 60, you have smoother transition. The downfall of this is that the resulting file is getting bigger and bigger the more frame per second you have, and the bigger your image is, the bigger your files will be. Before the next steps, it's reminded us what is the configuration settings. So they are almost all as we defined, apart as we see here, the output that will scale down to 1279 by 720. So this might be something that is fine for the first tests we are going to do, and depending on your situation, in my case, I will increase this. Anytime you can come back to Tools and launch again the Auto Configuration Wizard. In my case, what I want to do is to go and change that settings. Like that, you will see where you have to go to adapt your settings. So you go on to File, Settings, and now we have a window with all the possible settings for OBS, stream, output, audio, video. We can define hotkeys and go in advanced mode. I will find my settings for the output file here defined into video. You see we have the definition of the base canvas that we are using, and just below we have the output which is scaled to a lower definition 1279 by 720. And it's this that I want to change. And I'm going here inside, and I have all the possible resolutions that I can find here. And I'm going to choose this one, which is the one that equals my input. Now that the configuration is done, we can start to work with OBS. The first thing to understand is down there in the left corner, there is the notion of a scene. A scene, you have to understand it as, like in a movie, there are different scenes with different components. Components that will constitute the final image we are going to prepare. For this, we are going to use what is right of the scene panel. It's the sources. In the sources, just going down to the plus, you will see that we have a lot of different sets of sources that we can add. In my case, what I want to do is to display my desktop. So for this, I have here display capture. But you see that just below, if you were running a game, you could launch a source as being that game, in fact. That is here. You can also add images, or you can see below, we will also use later on some text to overlay our scene. So for the moment, I'm just going to select display capture. The system is proposing me to name my source display capture. This is really convenient, and I will leave it as such. A new window has opened proposing me the properties of the source. I will simply accept them as they are. Wow, that's it! Now we are using OBS. I see here now that there is the screen recording the screen into the screen, into the screen, into the screen, into the screen. That's always fascinating to me. The central panel we have here is the audio mixer. You see that for me there are already some audio sources defined, and you can see here moving according as I'm recording this video. In your case, it might be black, and if it's this case, we will go and add some audio input sources. So we go back to sources, we go on the plus sign, and here you see that you can add audio input capture devices. And here it's proposing me to add me a new one, audio input capture, to which I'm going to say OK. And from here on, it's opening me the property windows, and in which here up I can select different devices. On my computer, I have several audio input devices. I have different mics. That's why I have this. But this deserves some additional explanations. On your laptop or on your desktop, there are several components and several devices. In the center here, that blue point is representing a mic. That's the mic entry of that laptop. OBS is going to recognize those elements, and whenever you define a source of type audio, he is going to propose you the audio input devices he recognized. OBS is recognizing your webcam, and I've represented this by that green spot that you see on the top of the laptop. OBS recognizes also your laptop loudspeakers. I've represented them with those light red rectangles. That's why in my case I have several devices that are available as audio input, but we will leave it as the default value. Now we have the sound, and we see the bar of the mix auxiliary here moving. This is saying that it is recording my voice. I can set the level of a channel, an audio channel. I can move it up or move it down. It's well set when it is set to -20 dB. like that when I'm normally talking, I'm going up to those 20 dB. And when I increase a bit my voice, there is still space to record that increase in audio sound. Although you have already defined everything, you have no green bars moving. It means that OBS is not recording or getting any sound. To do that, I will go into the settings, and to show you that there is the audio configuration in which there is the definition of which channel is represented, for example, in my case, by mic auxiliary. You see that it is for me a mic that is called HDMI USB capture. It's the mic that comes in fact through my camera. You see here that many others are disabled, and of course that if all of them are disabled, OBS is not going to record or stream any sound. We now have all the elements to start a recording, so I'm going to start a recording. Now we are testing our recording, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Now we are going to look at the file that we generated. So it's here. We can go into show recordings. We see that the file is stored in my video area on my PC. This file has an MKV as file format. MKV is interesting specifically when you are doing streaming, because if you have an interruption of the line with MKV files, your work, what you are recording, what you are streaming, is not lost. You can save all the content till the point where you had the break in the transmission. If you are using MP4, in fact, everything will be lost from your recording or from your streaming. So I heavily recommend for files or recordings or streaming that are longer than a few minutes that you work with MKV file. My video editing software doesn't support MKV files, so OBS provides us the remix of recording. Here I've opened the Remix to make a conversion to an MP4 file. And for this, I go and I get my file. Once I've clicked open, the file is selected. And of course, you could select several files at the same time. And you simply say Remix. That's really fast. And it's already converted. We see now that I have here an MP4 file that has come and is the conversion that we just created. If, like me, for recording short sequences, you prefer to do it directly into MP4, we can change this, and for that we go to the settings, and here into output, we see under recording that there is the recording format, which is actually set to MKV. So I will look at the different selections I have, and I will choose MP4. With that, once I apply it, all my sequences that I will record will be in MP4 format. I would like to record my screen that contains a nice map of the OBS tutorial and all the elements I'm describing. For this, I go into Start Recording. I minimize OBS. And now I can show some other mind maps that I have. I can remind you that OBS can also be used as a virtual camera, and this is it. So for terminating that part, I'm coming back to OBS and I'm stopping the recording. I minimize OBS. And now I can show some other mind maps that I have. I can remind you that OBS can also be used as a virtual camera, and this is it. So for terminating that part, I'm coming back to OBS and I'm stopping. To simplify the work, I can use hotkeys. To define them, I have to go into settings, and we find here hotkeys. And what I will do is to define Alt F8 as starting the recording here. So I'm positioned into the level of that hotkey, and I'm going to key in Alt F8 to key on those keys exactly at the same time. And OBS is writing for me the combination of keys. Now I select to stop OBS with the same combination, so I key again Alt F8. Now I can say apply here, OK, and we are going to see. So I'm now going to apply Alt F8 to start OBS. Yes, it started. And now I'm going to apply Alt F8 to stop it. Yes, it did it. I will now create a more elaborated scene. So I will start from the existing scene, and I will create a new one by duplicating it. So by right-clicking, I can go into duplicate, and you see that it's proposing me a new name, scene 2. For me, it's fine. What I will add, it's that I will add a webcam. So I'm going to name this scene 2 plus webcam. And here I'm saying, okay. So you see that we really have two scenes, the scene and scene 2 with webcam. And I said I'm going to add a webcam. For this, I'm adding a source, which is the video capture device, which is here. And I'm going to rename this webcam. Like that, I know it is the webcam on my system. The webcam has now opened, and you discover my green screen painted on the walls. So we have here all the properties of the webcam, but I'm just going to leave this as such. So here I'm going to say, okay. And now you see in our scene, we have here in the middle with the border that is red, it's the selected scene. I can now click on it and drag it and move it around as I would like. And you see I'm going to put it down here in the right corner. There are some filtering options that we can add to the sources. So my source is the webcam. And what I want to do is to crop a bit the image. So for that, I'm pressing at the same time as I drag on the side the Alt key. So Alt and I drag, and you see that I can reframe the side, I can reframe the top also, and I will do the other side. Like that, this can apply to any image. I want now to add a third scene here, so I'm going to do exactly as we did before. I'm duplicating scene 2. I'm renaming this scene 3, and I will add to the scene 3 also an image. So I have my third scene, which is here. Now what I want to show is that I can reduce the display. So I'm selecting it and dragging it. So like that I have this, and I'm going now to add a source, which is an image. So I'm selecting here among the sources image. I'm going to name this, it will be the image of a computer. So I'm going to name it computer. And you see that I can now browse, go and get the image, which is here. It's already recognized as a JPEG. And I can simply say, okay. The image is brought in at the size of the image. So I would like that image to take the complete screen. So I'm right-clicking and going down to transform. And within transform, I can find the property, the function fit to screen. So I'm activating this. And of course, since it was the first image here on top, it covers everything, so I'm just moving it down that I see the webcam, and I move it down another step And like that, I have the image, the captured display, and myself here on the webcam. At this level, I'm quite sure that you're saying, okay, you have a background that is green. What about chroma key and green screens? So to do that, we'll go on the webcam, and here I can add certain filters. So you see that we have audio filters, and here the effect filters are the one concerning the image. So by clicking on the plus, I have different sets of filters that I can add. I'm going to add here the chroma key one. I'm going to leave it named chroma key like that. And now I have some properties. I'm not going to enter into all the properties I have here, but the principle is the following. It's that I'm going to increase the similarities, that it looks the best around me. About here, I should say it's okay. And I have some smoothness for the edges that I can still add. Going now to look at what is the result. For me, I should reduce a bit some of the elements, filters, the chroma key one. I'm just coming back to reduce that one here a bit more. Yes, so it's not my best camera, but I think that you got the principle of what you can see now. I will now add a text, and for this, in the same scene, I'm coming to take the text as a source. I will name that text after my company, Vision 6D. And I will key in now the text, Vision 6D. I leave it with the default font of Arial. And I'm saying here, okay. And we see here up, there is a text that came in. I'm going to position it to the right upper corner here. Make it a bit smaller. And what I would like is to add a blue background. In order to do this, I can add a color source here. You see, I will leave the name as color source. And here I can select the color. I will pick the blue that is here. I'm saying, okay, this is just fine for me. And you see that it's quite big, so I'm going to reduce it and I'm going to move it. I'm going to reduce it a bit more. Okay, this could be fine. And now I need to have the text that comes over, so I'm moving up the text. And I'm going to center it a bit better here. With that, we have now a complete scene composed of a logo, a small logo with the name of the company, the webcam in which you see me with the green screen, the display capture, and a background, which is an image. I will now lock the text and the background. Like that, if I move any element, I won't unfortunately move them. For example, I come here and select the background image that I would like to move. And you see, I'm not moving the other two elements. I'm now ready to start streaming, to do a recording, or start a virtual camera. Now I'm streaming or recording, and you see that if I want people to get concentrated on the desktop part, I can now switch the scene here. The way we see is that we can pass from one scene back to the other one. We have here some scene transitions. You saw that the one that we used was the fade one, but there are different ones. And I will just show you the slide one. Like that, we've defined the slide as a transition. We can see here in the properties a preview. Like that, you can test the transition. You see? We simply say, okay. And now we'll do what we've done before, and we should expect to see the scene slide. this is the case, we see it well slide. Our scene transitions are set. Now to improve this, I can also define shortcuts or hotkeys to go into the different scenes. For that, I go into settings and I go again into the hotkeys, and here down you will see that we have the possibility for each of the scene that we have defined to define a hotkey. I have currently defined Alt F9 to go to the scene and Alt F10 to go to the scene number 3. For that, I simply say OK. So I'm on the scene 3. So I will do Alt F9 to go to the scene, the first one, Alt F10, and I go back. And I can, like that, easily switch from one scene to the other one with the transition in between. This is the typical environment that I'm using for recording my tutorials. It's horizontal and the resolution is 2K. And now I'm going to switch, and I have switched to a vertical format. This is a typical configuration that I use to do shorts for YouTube or for TikTok. Let's look how we can easily pass from one format to the other one. If now I want to have a vertical format, it's quite simple. I go into settings, I select video, and we see here we have the canvas size, which is 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to see if there are other resolutions, but we see that they are all in the span of horizontal ones. So to have a vertical one, it's really simple. I simply key in the value I would like to have, 1080 by 1920. And I already have now the vertical format. But there is still one thing that I need to check, because this is the displayed output, what we see, but you see here below the output resolution has been changed to something totally different. So I'm going to select the same for the output resolution. With that, I'm sure that when I will do recording of my session, that I really have it also in the vertical format. If now I want to go back to the horizontal format, it's quite simple. I go back into the settings, and in there I will go and change back to the value it had before. If now I frequently need to switch from the horizontal to the vertical one and vice versa, I always have to go and change the configuration. So for this reason, OBS is providing us profiles in which we can store all the configuration for one setting set. Switching from horizontal to vertical format, this was an example. There are many other situations where you are going to change the settings. For example, if you are recording in 720p or 2K or 4K or 8K, or for example, you are going to do a settings for a live on YouTube or a live on Facebook or on Twitch. For all of those configurations, you will need different settings. So instead of doing them every time, using profiles is really convenient, since you will save in each profile the different configuration. I have here my environment for the tutorials, and when I go within profiles, we see that I have different profiles that are defined. Simply by clicking on vertical format, we see immediately the change, and I'm in that different setting. I can now go back by going into profile and choosing again my profile for tutorials. To create a profile, it's simple. We select new. I'm going to give it the name vertical format new. and then I say OK, and this will launch the wizard. And I will optimize this for recording, and it will give me a frame size by 1920 1080. I have no other choices, so I'm going to choose this. And here again, I say next, and I will now have to go and modify the settings to have the vertical format. So I go into video, what we did before, and I'm going to key in the 1080 by 1920. This is defined here. And since I want to have the same ratio for the output, I'm also selecting it at the same time. Like that, I can say apply, and now I have my vertical format. I have now into profile, we see vertical format new, and the previous one was named untitled. And we can switch back and forth really easily between the two. Going into our profiles, we have the current one here, which is defined as untitled. So we are going to rename it, and it will be tutorial format. So if I go, I have tutorial format or the vertical format. So now I can also duplicate a profile. This is the case when, for example, I have my tutorial format with a lot of configurations elements, and I don't want to rekey, or I have just a few that are going to change. For this, I can say duplicate, and it's going to ask me for a profile name. So I'm entitling that one vertical format. And of course, since it's a duplicate, nothing changed. So I have now to go into the settings to the spots where I have things to change. And it's what I'm currently doing here. And I can say apply. And I have now the same settings that I'm using for the vertical format. So I have tutorial format and vertical format. That's with what I want to work. You see that by duplicating, if you have just a few changes, then it's way faster. It's way faster to go that way. Within our profiles, we have the remaining vertical format new, which is the same function as vertical format. So we are going to remove it, and for that we selected it, and then we key in remove. We are warned whether we really want to do that, and simply say yes. You can copy files, you can duplicate them. This is really convenient. There is one point that we haven't discussed, and I'm sure that you noticed it. It's that our scenes here, they don't exploit really the vertical format. This means that when you are changing the format of the Canva or some other parts of the settings, you might need to adapt the scenes. So of course, if now you are going to adapt the scenes and you switch back to the tutorial one, the horizontal one, they won't be adapted. So it's why we need to have also a scene collection that matches the change into the profile. Like that, we can at any time go to the scene collection and select, for example, the vertical scene, which is what I have right now. So to adapt the scene, I'm going to add a new element. I'm going to choose as a source a media source, and I will name it Milky Way. I will browse, and I will take a video in vertical format. I say OK, and now I can transform it fit to screen. Like that, I have my Milky Way that is present. So Now you see that you have scene collections that have to match what you have within the profiles. Like that, you can adapt. You can easily play with scenes and profile to create an environment that is adapted to what you want to show. Now your profile, you can save them by using the export function, and you are going to export them on your drive. I'm creating a new folder that I call OBS, within which I will create another folder that I will name profiles. Like that, I know where my profiles will be. I select the folder, and this is it. It has been now exported to that folder. To export your profile files as well as scene collection files is a really good habit in case of you have a hard disk crash, an SSD disk crash, or if you are moving to a new computer, or you are transferring some of the profiles to another laptop, or you are exchanging with some friends or colleagues. These are really good habits to have. In Geneva, we have an event that I really like to shoot. It's fascinating. It starts early in the afternoon of a Saturday. People are coming from everywhere. There is plenty of music, and you see them. It's really colorful. I'm Christian from Vision 6D, and now I'm going to show you the detail of one of the participants. And here, every year we see increases in the level of the costumes. And what I did, it's that I used from OBS the studio mode, where you could see that I had one scene that was streamed. It's the one that we saw on the right. And there was another scene that was ready to be streamed, but I could still do some adjustment. And then I did my transition, and from the moment the transition is done, the diffusion is the new scene. You activate the studio mode by simply going into the control zone and clicking on studio mode. On the right side is what is called the program. It's what is currently streamed or recorded. On the left side is the preview. It's the scene that I'm preparing or the one that I'm going to put live or switch to. In the window that is the program here, it's what we are really streaming. During that time, I can here in the preview part select the scene. You see that I've selected scene 6 while I'm diffusing the scene 5. And I can bring in some changes that I would like. From the moment that I have, or that I am preparing those changes here, you don't see any effect on what is streamed. That is to say that I can bring in any modification before to diffuse this scene or change or switch to this scene, but I preferred how I was standing on the right side. So soon, and I can say, now let's decide that we transition. We want the new scene to be streamed. So I come here, transition, and here we go. We see that now I have here the new scene that is diffused, streamed, while the two scenes were swapped one with the other one. I'm now streaming a scene, and I would like to prepare a new one. For that, I'm going to duplicate the scene 5, and I'm going to entitle it scene 7, and the media I'm going to call them media 3. So I'm doing this while the diffusion is on. I position the scene sequence just for me, and I'm coming here and I'm going to add a source, a media source, and I'm taking a media source that exists. It's the media dancer. So I say, okay, here. And I have now the media dancer, which is here. And I need to stop in this window, the media lake parade. And I'm going with this a bit down that we see that we'll have this media. You see a particularity of OBS. It's when you are inserting a new media source with videos, it's not displaying the content. So it's difficult to see what you are really going to get with this. Anyway, we are going to go through the transition to see whether it's right that I have a new scene that will become active. So it's the case. You see here my media with the dancer is starting. You might notice one thing, it's that the image here is quite small. So could I correct this while I'm still streaming? Yes. For this, I'm taking the preview, and you see that now we see the video content being displayed. So I can here come, choose the transformation, and into the transformation go to fit the screen, and we see that we have here an image that has become larger, takes all the screen, and I can now directly do the transition without any waiting time. So I have now an image that is corrected and is directly inserted into the stream. We can perform some other types of transitions. Here with the cursor, you see that I can slowly transit from one image to the other one. I'm choosing the speed of the transition. I can also add another type of transition. For this, I go into quick transition here and I will take slide. So I've added that type of transition. Let's test it. And yes, we had that sliding movement left to right. With the studio mode, there are also some settings that you can change. To find them, you go into general, you go down, and you have the options from the studio mode that are here. One that is interesting, for example, it's to enable the portrait vertical layout, and we will see now what it exactly means. We see that the screen has been reduced, and we have really a vertical mode in which we can work. I'm going to reduce this, and one of the usage, for example, it's that in this way you can work with more space, more free space here in your environment. In the basics with OBS, we covered the major functions. For me, it's always a pleasure to share those knowledges with you. I'm Christian from Vision 6D, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, thumb up, and all what is left to me is to wish you a great time and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.